Here on the Safe Haven podcast, any names mentioned should not be considered as suspects unless officially stated as such by law enforcement. Any opinions during interviews on this podcast are the opinions of the interviewee and don't reflect the opinions of the Safe Haven podcast or the AMU cold case team. Everyone is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Welcome to this episode of Safe Haven, the unsolved murder of Judith Petty. And I am joined, as always, by Melissa. And we are also joined by Jen again, as well as Alan Haskins. How is everybody doing today?
Great.
Well, we had our St. Patty's Day parade downtown yesterday, so that probably says enough.
That's why you didn't want to do this early in the morning?
You got it. You wouldn't have wanted me here early this morning. I'm trying to recover.
Understandable.
Yeah. Anyways, hi, everybody. Glad to be here.
Doing good. Glad to be here. I'm eager to get down to the brass tacks about this toxicology report, stuff like that. So,
Yeah, so let's talk about what this episode is. I know in the last episode we mentioned that we were going to kind of take a break from recording just because we were looking into many different leads and investigative avenues that we can pursue, and we actually have an update on a few things last time. So we wanted to get back on the airwaves and just give everybody an update on some things that we've been looking into and have some better idea or information on. And so the reason why we have Alan back with us, as you remember, he's our arson expert, arson. Which one is it, Alan?
I'm not an arsonist, but I know a little bit about it.
I hope you're not one.
He's our expert. Yeah, right. I always mess it up, and I'm glad everyone knows what I mean. So
let's just say
Alan,
fire.
You have fire expert.
Yes.
Fire expert.
Yep.
For the listeners who may not know, Alan was our guest, in the beginning of our investigation. He was looking at the fire and trying to help us determine about what the fire, said in regards to Judy's case and help us kind of determine the order of events. But Alan has actually stayed on with us and has become really part of the team and really helping us look more into all the different avenues of what really happened with Judy. So one of the questions that we've had is what, if any, role did Judy's diabetes play in her murder? And one of the things that we couldn't figure out was, is this something that, she had a diabetic episode, and then did the diabetes and her death have any correlation with one another? So Alan reached out to his physician to ask some questions. And Alan, you want to tell us a little bit about that and what you found out?
He said it's very possible, honestly. He said that, and then, of course, if you read into the case, you remember what we've talked about with the toxicology report and stuff. It's, it showed that they used the liver to find all these things about her, when there was no carbon monoxide, there was no other fire gases. He felt like that he was pretty confident that there would be, if she would have had like some kind of an episode, there probably would have been evidence of it in the liver because. And he said that, and my question to him was, well, would there have been enough time? If she would have had some kind of a diabetic episode, would it have gotten to the liver in that amount of time? And he said, absolutely. He said it would have gotten there very quickly. So what we're discovering is there's probably some more things that we can discover about the liver as well, that we've just got to dive into a little bit more. But he was pretty confident that she possibly could have. And I don't know. We have to go back and check and look at things, but it wasn't really on there. We don't know that they actually did do a, check for any kind of diabetes problems or any kind of an episode. So that's probably something we need to look at.
Did your doctor say, is it possible that she had a diabetic episode and then could have just passed out and then died? Is that possible?
I would think so. I mean, she was on medicine for it. She could have had, he kind of felt like she probably could have, so.
But then we have the fire, right?
Right. And then the fire is, I mean, we can come up with all these different scenarios, but then the fire is just one of those things that we're going to have to really dive into and try to figure out how it actually started, because I've racked my brain a million different ways trying to figure that part of it out. And it's really, really difficult to imagine how it could have started like it did, especially if it was two sets, which some people think that it was, some people think that it wasn't. So I don't know. We're going to have to do some more investigating on that part of it too.
Did he have any kind of opinion that she would have had an episode prior to getting to the farm, given her weight, her stature, and walking 13 miles?
Of course, it was just speculation on his part, but he said that
Sure.
it would be very, very possible that she could have, especially walking that far. She hadn't had, anything to eat. Your sugar can do two different things. It can go hyper or it can go hypo, which hyper is, getting high. Hypo is when it gets low. And if she hadn't had a whole lot to eat that day or drink, and she walked that far, it's a very good possibility she went on the low side and could have, gotten weak and gotten dizzy and passed out. And, we've talked about before, trying to explain the time difference from the last time somebody's seen her and in the distance over to where Chris Cutright picked her up or says he picked her up at. The time frame there really doesn't make a whole lot of sense unless she had to stop and sit around for a little bit somewhere. So, that's something else that we've got to look into.
One of the things I go over in my head is that I can see her diabetes coming into play during her walk, in the sense of, she's 245 pounds. She's out walking a very long way. She most likely didn't have any water or any food with her. And I've talked to a couple of people, and my brother-in-law is actually diabetic, and he was here recently, and he told me at one point he walked 3 miles and he didn't have any kind of water or drink. And he, within that 3 miles, and he's not overweight, he's good, healthy otherwise, he became delirious and he couldn't remember anything. And so he says, oh my goodness, there's no way she would have walked there and not had any kind of side effects or symptoms because of the length of walking, but also because she had no way of getting any kind of insulin or medicine. So to me, I feel like her diabetes played a role in her travels. And the only thing I can come up with is that when she first crossed the path of the people who offered to give her a ride on Old St. Mary's Pike and Laurel Creek, and she declined it, I don't feel like she was having an episode at that point. She was still fairly early in on her walk. So I feel like she felt she was okay. Then as she continued to walk, I think it is possible that she had to stop somewhere to kind of match up with Chris's time of midnight. But I think that's why when he shows up, she is starting to feel the effects. And that could be why she decides to get in the car with him, because she's starting to feel not right. And she knows she needs to get to the farm sooner than later. Whereas earlier in the night, she's feeling kind of okay. So I think maybe that's why when I said, well, she didn't talk very much in the car with Chris, and my brother-in-law said, there's no way she have, because she's in this state right now where she doesn't know what's going on. And probably pretty confused. So she wouldn't be talking a lot. And that made a lot of sense to him. So I said, interesting. And he said, well, that short ride could have given her enough of energy to then get up that driveway, because she had time to sit and then get up that driveway. So for me, I'm like, I think her diabetes played a role into her route and why she got in a car with Chris, maybe why she didn't talk a lot. But then we get to now she's at the farm. What happens and how does the fire start and how does she end up dead?
You bring up a good point there about her actions when she gets in the car and out of the car and all that. I know I teach here at a fire academy, but I've helped in our police academy as well up here. And one of the things that we try to teach the police officers a lot of times on a traffic stop or something like that, if they get on an accident and somebody is showing signs of being intoxicated, sometimes they're not that way. Sometimes they're showing, that's a diabetic episode where they act intoxicated. And there have actually been instances where people have been arrested and thrown around a little bit till the police officers figured out that that's what was actually going on with them, and they weren't really drinking or anything. So I absolutely don't want to rule out the possibility that she had some kind of episode, because I think it's very plausible.
Feel like that episode has anything to do with her death. Would anyone else think that?
I can't, I mean, like Alan said, I couldn't rule it out. I think it definitely has to be considered. I mean, the timeline is an issue. We keep going back to that. Like, where did these couple of hours go? What was she doing? What was it? The last sighting was like 8:30, and then Chris is saying midnight, but she should have, been well past the spot he picked her up by like 10 p.m. So, if his recollection's correct, then we have to try to figure out what happened in those couple hours, what delayed her.
It could be she was definitely slowing down and needed more time to walk because she was making pretty good pace. And then I think, we know she wasn't feeling well that day, right? So we know that she was sick earlier in that day. She went and got some 7 from the store. So already physically, she's not well. There's something going on with her physically, and that we just don't have more information on. And then on top of that, you have the diabetes. And on top of that, you have her walking, 12 miles. So I think all of that put together shows that there was something more going on with her, that it was kind of too late by the time it hit her. And she got up to the farm and probably was looking for something to drink, somewhere to sit.
I would think.
But she could have gone in the house.
Yeah, that's the mystery. How does she end up in this cellar? I don't think any of us have come up with any really great scenario. Why wouldn't she be in the house?
That's one thing that keeps, that, and then tying that fact into the fire. How did it start? How did it get to where it's at? So on and so forth. The accidental thing, we've got to play it. We got to look at it. But I mean, we got to look at all sides of it at this point. But I don't know. It's just hard for me to fathom accidentally 2 fires, if it was 2. And like I've stated before, I mean, I've looked at it several times. I still kind of get the feeling that it might have been just one fire and spread from one structure to the other. But there's evidence that it could have, and there's evidence that it couldn't have. So that's something that we got to look at as well.
Right. And I think the reason I wanted you to come back on and talk about this is because we were trying to find a doctor, a physician, somebody who could answer the questions regarding her diabetes. And is that a factor here?
Yeah.
And based on what your physician said, that, she probably had some kind of episode. Did he say, Alan, correct me if I'm wrong, that he didn't feel, though, that it would have been to the extreme of her getting into some kind of bad situation?
Yeah, he didn't think so, because he said that if it was that, and that's what she died from, and the fire started because, let's say she, passed out and had some kind of lantern or candles or something, and it started the fire that way. He said definitely there would still be the fire gases in her lungs, and in her liver, of course, in her lungs, but we couldn't find those. They got liver. So he said it definitely would have been there. He felt like, honestly, he said, I feel like you're on the right track, that she died before the fire started. And that seems to be the consensus amongst other folks that we've talked to, that have degrees in that kind of stuff. And that they seem to think the same way he does. So I don't know. It's really tough. It's really, really tough being 14, 15 years out from this, and I don't want to sit here and start pointing fingers and saying this person's wrong and that person's wrong and what they done was wrong. But we can all probably come to consensus that there probably was some mistakes made at the time, but I don't know that it was intentional. I think it was done because of maybe the technology that they had at the time. I don't know. I just think we're on the right track, and we need to be looking at stuff a whole lot harder than maybe they did back then, I guess to say. I don't know.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? I don't mean, like I said, I don't mean to say anybody's wrong or anything like that, but.
Did your physician get into it all? Like, what would happen if someone experiences this diabetic episode and then ultimately causes their death? Like, how long? Because there's such thing as a diabetic coma, right? I guess you'd go into a coma first. I wonder how long it would take to actually pass away if you had no medical help.
That I don't know. I can probably talk to some of my people, paramedic friends and others that I've got, that I'm pretty good friends with, and probably find that out. But I don't know. That's
it just came to mind. So I know we didn't discuss that before.
That's a good question.
Yeah, because I believe she would have had smoke in her lungs. I don't think it's instant.
No, and that's kind of what he my physician whenever I talked to him. That's kind of the way he insinuated that it would not be instant. Like, we tried to, we've mulled over the suicide thing. There wasn't no gunshot residue anywhere, as far as lead smear or bullet smear or anything on any of the bones fragments that they found. So that's the only thing that I could think of that would have been instantaneous as far as suicide would be a gunshot. So definitely, dying of natural causes like that from, a diabetes attack would probably, well, I know it would, you'd have those fire gases and stuff in the system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I figured too. I was just curious.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we wanted to bring that to the listeners just to say we are exploring that avenue as well, because I know that was a question many people had that are currently, working on the case, but also our listeners too, wondering if her diabetes and any kind of confusion would have led to a dental death. And so we just wanted to say we've reached, and Alan spoke to his physician, and this is kind of more information on that. We feel like it's unlikely, but something to keep in mind that, she did have an episode which then resulted in her death. I think she did, but I don't feel like it goes hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Kind of add to what you were saying and what we were saying. We kind of get hung up on the carbon monoxide part of this, but there's literally hundreds of other fire gases that are in a structure fire like that could be found in the same system. I mean, in the same manner. You got just different, there's literally hundreds of them that you can find. A hydrogen cyanide's one of them. And that's what they use, in the gas chamber when they execute, folks, criminals. So, and they didn't find any of that. So I'm still leaning towards she had to have been dead before the fire started.
Yeah.
And whether it's accidental, whether it's, whatever, then we still got to go back to the fact of how did this fire start? How did, I don't know. And it's really, really perplexing.
Yeah. And we're actually going to talk a little bit about,
and I think that's good.
I was going to say, we're going to talk a little bit about one of our upcoming efforts to actually determine where the fire started. So, but I'm getting ahead of ourselves, but.
No, but I think that's good, Alan, because I didn't know, and I didn't think about that there are other things that would have been tested to show if she was dead before the fire or not, and not carbon monoxide. So thank you for bringing that up, because I was just focused on the carbon monoxide. And so that showed up at that level. You're saying other would have showed up as well?
Oh yeah, there would for sure. I can't think of, different ones for sure. The hydrogen cyanide is one of the other big ones that they test for. And it's caused by like styrofoams and plastics, carpets, things like that. And in the photos, in the crime scene photos that we're looking at, there's a mattress laying right there, or mattress springs and stuff. And with it being a storage building, there's no telling what all was down there. So, you got other gases that are just, being produced, and I can get you a list of all of them, that would be there and, show you guys, but they didn't find anything. They didn't even find carbon monoxide. So,
right.
I don't know. It's just hard for me to come up with the accidental reason for this, that unless, like you said, she had some kind of episode and fell over or whatever, and had a candle or, some kind of lantern or something like that would have started the fire. Even some flashlights can start fires. So
she still has to quit. Yeah. She still has to quit breathing though before that really spreads.
Right. And I don't know. It's really hard to figure.
Yeah. Going on to, our next thing that we're trying to figure out is looking at her liver and about the carbon monoxide levels, that were found in her liver, and really what that actually means. And so we did hold of a toxicologist, and she has a forensic science degree. And so we got on a Zoom with her, and Jen and I just kind of basically asked her, can you detect sugar levels, in the liver? Should we retest the liver tissue? What can we kind of get from that? And so based on, our conversation with her, one of the things that we're still trying to figure out that nobody really knows the answer to is, are sugar levels found in the liver? So we've asked many people that, and people are like, I don't think so, but I'm not sure. And come to find out, like, nobody likes the liver. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Except for maybe Justin.
It's not
the liver, but
it's not funny, but she goes,
Well-
yeah, we don't look at livers or something like that. Yeah, she's like, that's not the organ we usually use to test. But
Well,
she
I mean,
understood that's all we had in Judy's case.
Yeah, and Alan had that good point earlier about anything found in the. I mean, everything's broken down there. So
Mhm.
I don't know. It's what we got, and it's pretty useful piece of information, I think.
Well,
personally,
right.
so.
No, what she was saying is that the liver is one of the organs that nobody really likes to test. They're not fans of it. Some labs even refuse to even test livers anymore because they are just not just they're very sensitive, I guess you will. So said that, one of the things that they look at is, how much of a liver do you have, but that also they need to be really, really rich. And she used the word juicy. I know that sounds kind of gross, but juicy, like red blood cells. And so one of the questions that we had was, well, Judy's liver was burnt. I mean, charred on the outside. So would there be any of these red bloods inside of that? And so it really depends on how much of that liver was burnt in. But she did say that since we were able to get some results back showing that her carbon monoxide levels were within normal range, that there must have been enough of these red blood cells within the liver. Is that right, Jen?
Yeah, that's basically what she said. She said they obviously got some results. And so there must have been enough quality liver tissue for them to test. And so she felt pretty confident about that. And I think if I remember right, you kind of said it, but she was saying like they don't prefer the liver because it's not all of it's rich in red blood cells, and it's just not as quality of human tissue or human organ tissue as compared to others. And so that's why they don't try, that's not their preferred organ to test.
Ellen, what were you going to say? I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
It's pretty much, Justin said it a while ago, kind of. I've had people that were real good friends of mine that, were paramedic instructors, or I've heard them talk in their classes about, saying that the liver, you can look at it like as an oil filter in a car. I mean, everything goes there, and that's where it's filtered out of the system and the blood and stuff so every toxin that we have is going to end up in the liver, and then it goes into, it's broken down and then goes on out the system. But it's just going to be a catch-all pretty much for everything that's in your system.
One of the other questions we had was how much of a liver you need, if you will, to be able to get a good sample, because I was concerned that, number one, how much of the liver was recovered, but also then how much was able to be tested based on how charred the liver was and regarding to getting enough red blood cells. And what she said was that most labs require at least 10 grams of the liver tissue to be tested. And Judy had her liver was all there, wasn't it, Alan? Like it was a pretty big piece.
Yeah,
you talked to the chief.
I talked to Hartley, the fire marshal and done the investigation on it for the state. And that was one of the questions that I specifically asked him was, how much liver did you actually get? And he said, if you can imagine, as far as size wise, he said it was between the size of a baseball and a softball. So I mean that's quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So and like you were saying a while ago, with it being charred and burnt like it was on the outside, down deep inside, it's probably still going to have, like you said, juicy enough to get that stuff from it. So I feel like they probably had enough. Now, like I said a while ago, the technology back then versus now, who knows? We might be able to, to get it tested again if there's still some around, and we might come up with some more stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, and I asked her, like, she told us, because I'm a person who is very visual, so to me, I don't know what 10 grams is or looks like, and so she said that it's kind of like the size of like a chicken nugget. I can get that. Yeah. So I said, okay, I know that there was more than that based on the photos. Yeah. So I was more confident that we had enough. It was just, did we have enough red blood cells within that, which she said to get that 3% range and to also be able to detect the depression medication, there was enough liver to run these tests, because one of our concerns was, is this even Judy's liver? right? Because we know that there was concerns with the medical examiner's office back then. Judy's remains were mixed up with the two young girls. So the question was that I was afraid of is, how do we even know this is Judy's liver? How confident are we that this is Judy's liver? And based on the depression medications found in Judy's system, in her liver, I tend to believe more that this was Judy's liver, because the young girls, it's really rare for young girls to be on such depression medications at their age and the levels, they were within range, but I'm more confident that this is actually Judy's liver.
I agree.
And actually, on that note, I reached out to a woman who's helped us on another case. Her name's Francine Bardol. She's like one of the cutting edge DNA extraction experts in our country. She's amazing. Anyways, I asked her, my understanding is they do still have Judy's liver sample. And so I asked Francine, like, can they get a DNA profile from that liver tissue to confirm it's Judy's if they wanted to do that? And Francine said yes. So I, like you were saying, I don't know that needs to be done, because I think we're pretty confident it's Judy's liver, but it is a possibility. Like if they just want to make sure, they could extract and get a DNA profile from that liver tissue.
And so we do have some tissue left. So they did a card, Jen, of tissue, of her liver tissue. So we do have that still in play. But we asked her, would there be a benefit in retesting the liver, or what we have of these samples now compared to 2008? And she kind of said, I think you got what you got. I don't think you're going to get any more, because it did pick up these different drugs. We know that there was no illicit drugs in her system. We know that, her carbon monoxide levels, she said, I think you've got what you've got, and that's probably the best you're going to get because of time as well. And the liver decompensates very quickly. And that's why a lot of people do not use the liver anymore, is because it does deteriorate very quickly over time. So, we kind of are stuck with, I think we are at where we're at with the liver in regards to further testing. She
did say she felt they did a wide range of testing. We read her the toxicology report. Right. And she goes, oh yeah, they tested for all the major illegal drugs. They tested for alcohol. They tested for prescription meds. Like she said, they did a wide range of tests, which made her feel pretty confident in the results. But what we were asking her is, this relates to Judy possibly having a diabetic episode. And we were curious, could this liver tissue today show what her sugar levels were at the time of her death? And the toxicologist didn't think that was possible. But she brought up that they might be able to detect the level of ketones. And that could be an indicator as to whether Judy was in the midst of like a medical crisis at the time of her death. And so she did say that's one thing they could retest for now. Basically, like the ketones it's a type of chemical that the liver produces when it breaks down fats. And so when your body's like going into overdrive, like some people want to go into ketosis for fitness reasons and to lose weight. In diabetics, it's not healthy at all. It's dangerous. But anyways, you use ketones for energy when your body is like getting into starvation mode. And so that level of ketones will go up. So if Judy's sugar level was down, or she was experiencing some kind of sugar level crisis, her ketone level would be elevated. And they might be able to detect that level of ketones now with new testing of that liver tissue. Hopefully that makes sense.
No, that absolutely makes sense. So that's one of the things we are wondering, is that something we could look at to determine? And I think her concern was how it's been stored all these years.
Yeah, because you can preserve human tissue for a long time. But at some point, like you said, things deteriorate, and it depends what it's been stored in and, proper temperatures and stuff like that. And those are questions that I don't know where Judy's liver tissue is stored at right now, probably their forensic lab or whatever, but they would have to take a look at it and see what condition it's in.
Right. Because she was worried that back then they probably stored it in formaldehyde, which would not be good, I believe she said. So those are some of the things that we're looking into, and people we've talked to, experts in the field, to try to help us in this investigation as we keep going. And some of the things that we're looking into right now, as Jen mentioned earlier, that we are hoping to excavate, or I don't even know if that's the right word, but we're hoping to take a section of the cement, the concrete where Judy's body was found, to determine if accelerants are there. And Alan, do you want to explain a little bit more about that we're trying in regards to if accelerants were poured on Judy, how that would still be there in the cement?
If there were accelerants poured on her body, which if she was placed there, if this was an arson case, most likely that's what the arsonist would have done, was poured it on her, because whenever an arsonist in that situation, whenever they're trying to get rid of something, they're trying to get rid of that evidence, that's what they're going to concentrate on. So what would have happened with concrete being as porous it is, and that old of a concrete is what with that cellar was made out of, it's been there for a while, it would have absorbed that concrete. And my question is would there still be traces of those hydrocarbons and that stuff in that concrete? So what we're hoping to do is find a lab that can test that for us. And we're going to take probably 3 to 4 samples from different areas there. And then we're going to take a control sample that we're pretty confident doesn't have the concrete there, the hydrocarbons and stuff in it, and get them tested just to see and to see if it's actually there.
Right. And so we did talk to the Petty family, and they have agreed, of course, 100% to allow us back onto the property to take these samples, because they're obviously still wanting answers after 15 years. And I think this is just another great idea the team has come up with. We've been talking with Doug about this as well, who's on board and looking at how we can, get these samples. And I think is there a shout out? We need a lab who will test this, right, Jen?
Yeah, I've contacted a couple labs this week and talked to them. I was Googling forensic chemistry labs because I think that would be the most appropriate field of forensics to test for accelerants. And I did contact a couple labs and talk to them, but neither of them do this type of testing. So we are still searching for the right forensics lab that can help us out on this. But once we find one, discuss price and all that stuff and how we can get this paid for and everything, Doug is more than happy to go out and extract those concrete samples and send them in. And I want to say, I would say, obviously, if they find traces of accelerant, then to me, that closes the book on accident or suicide, and that this is a homicide. Because I can't come up with any legitimate reason why Judy would pour gasoline in the cellar and light a fire. So that's why this could be a super important test for narrowing down the manner of death.
Exactly. And I think I was exactly going to go there too, Jen, and explain why we were looking at this for people who are like, well, why are they trying to figure that out? So one of the hiccups still is we need determination, right? We feel like this leans more to, as we mentioned in other episode, a homicide. But one of the things that's really going to help, steer us in either direction is if there was accelerants poured right where Judy's body was, but then maybe not on the other end of the cellar, right?
Exactly.
And so this was a huge breakthrough of ideas when you have so many great team members coming together to say, hey, what about this? We're willing to do that. And so, Jen, what's the name of the test that we need done in case anybody of our listeners knows a lab? What specific test are we looking for? For Alan. Alan, what test are we looking for?
It's just a forensic chemistry test on just searching for hydrocarbons or searching for, any kind of chemical. I mean, it may not have been gasoline, kerosene, lighter fluid, alcohol, paint thinner, anything like that they could have used. That is a flammable liquid that would have started a fire.
Okay.
Most likely it's going to be gasoline, but
right.
That's most common. But we'd like to look for anything to see if there's any evidence of that there.
I think what we need is a lab that specializes in gas. What's the word?
Chromatology.
Alan? Yes, thank you. Where it can break down. You guys have to forgive me because I failed chemistry literally in high school, so I'm not good at this. It can break down the molecules or whatever of the substance is, and then provide this readout of what's the most likely contributor. What is this compound made up of?
What that stuff does, what it does is it'll actually break down all the different. It would basically identify everything that's in there.
Yes.
So, and that's, to put it in layman's terms, that's basically what it's going to do.
Yeah. So if
there's a
anybody
bunch
has
of-
a suggestion of a lab, please, or even if you're not sure or you have an idea, just shoot Melissa or Justin a message.
That's exactly what I want to do, and maybe even make a post
Mhm.
asking for anybody.
Yes.
And that's why I wanted to know exactly what we're looking for in regards to the testing or a lab that could potentially help us because we're ready to go, right? And so we have everything lined up. We just need to find a lab. We have the family approval. We have Doug on board.
Mhm.
We have a plan. We just need to know a lab that's willing to do it, and then figure out what the cost would be, or if they're willing to provide this out of the kindness of their heart.
Yeah. I've dealt with many different types of labs, and like Francine was one, where they'll donate a certain number of hours or cost to, a quest like this, or, knowing that
Right.
we're a volunteer team, self-funded. There are labs that will do that, but that's not, that would be so nice, but that's not our priority in finding a lab. We just want to find the right
No.
one first, and then we'll worry
Yep.
about the money aspect later.
Absolutely. And this is like a game changer, I think, for Judy's case, if we can get this done, because it really is going to tell us a lot
Yeah.
either way.
Mm-hmm.
And so we wanted to share that, just because it's a shout out to anybody who might know of a lab that would be, able to do this or put us in connection with somebody. And the other thing that we are planning on doing in a few weeks, Alan, you want to talk about our consult just
Yeah.
a little bit?
Through some of my contacts, we reached out to some people that I know in the ATF, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, which, if a lot of people are not aware of what they do, they're probably the leading investigative unit in the United States for arson and explosion investigations, on top of the other things that they do. But one of the things that they have is a profiler unit within there. And I reached out to a friend of mine that's an agent with the ATF, and he knew what I was looking for and knew who to get a hold of. And he put me in touch with this lady, and we have set up a meeting here in a couple of weeks with her. And she's going to look into helping us come up with a profile for who might have done this, and also for the reason that Judy may have done everything that she did. So that's pretty exciting as well.
For sure.
Yeah,
They're
that's
experts
so-
in that field. So
Yeah.
I can't wait to hear from them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. And I think that, again, these are connections we're making, and people are helping us get connected with the right people, because it takes a whole team to work on a case like this. And so we definitely are putting our olive branches out and seeing what we can't figure out. And this is one of the things we've been wanting to, is a profile on this fire. But also, I'm interested in a profile of, and I don't know if Alan, if they're able to tell us this, of maybe if we are looking at a homicide, what type of offender are we looking for based on everything we know?
Yeah. And I really do think that that's what, one of the things that she's going to look at and talk to us about. And of course she
Perfect.
needs, she needs background on the case. So that's why we're meeting with her, and to give her all the details and everything. So,
Right.
and I do believe that that's what one of the things that she will look at is, what type of person would have done this, and the profilers can actually kind of show different things as to what that was going through their mind at the time, and what the action shows, and and that sort of thing. So I'm pretty excited about it. I honestly think we might help us get some leads anyways on this.
Yes, I think so. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think it's more than we've ever had, right? And so we've
Mhm.
all done our investigative, and we've looked everywhere, but we are still, constantly getting tips and following different leads, or people that their names have come up. But this is just another tool in our toolbox to help us, point us in what direction we need to be going. And I think it's a really exciting thing for Judy and the Petty family to know that, people are helping us, and that's
Yes.
a really good thing. So,
Yeah.
All right. So those are the two big things that are happening in the safe haven world. We're looking at, testing some of the concrete where Judy was found, and then also talking with a profiler to help us understand more about the fire and the actions of, Judy, and also who the offender, if that's what we're looking at. And that's going to help, all of this is going to lead us to, hopefully the right answer of what happened.
Yep. And I'm just going to remind listeners that there's $7,500 sitting out there. If, someone knows something or saw something, or even if you don't think it's important, report it anyways. That's where the reward fund is at right now. And that's again, tax free. You don't have to go through any government agency or whatever. We'll just write you a check. So hopefully maybe that will be an incentive to someone out there who has that critical piece of information.
Exactly. And there is, just for listeners, there's some other social media things happening on Judy's case. People have reached out to cover her case. So when that happens, we will definitely share that, because the more people who hear about Judy, the better, and the more contacts we make. And so there are people who have found out through Safe Haven, Judy's case, and there's quite more of an interest, and that's only good to help move us forward. So thank you all for joining. Alan, thanks for joining us again.
No problem.
And for anyone who knows, Alan is a Cardinals fan, and me and Justin are Cubs. So we're a little iffy about him, but we'll keep him around for a little bit.
Go Cubs,
Yeah.
go.
Go
Oh
Cubs,
my
go.
Keep him around so we
Hey, at
can
least we
suck
don't
all
have
of
to
his
cheat to
knowledge out of
win.
his brain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have to cheat to win. It's fine.
Just got to keep remembering Mark McGuire hit 62 before Sosa did. So, yeah.
Oh
McGuire
my
was-
gosh.
They were all juiced up, dude. Come on.
Yeah.
Well, you still, even with the juice, you still got to have the hand-eye coordination to hit a ball with a bat. So, I mean, there's that.
That's a long
Alright.
time ago, Alan. You gotta live in the present. So
Whatever.
okay.
Hey, don't run him
Well,
off yet. Okay.
Hey,
We-
I know.
How-
Wait.
How many
We love
World
you, Alan.
Series have you got? How many World Series wins have you got? Oh, okay.
Let's talk about the most recent. All right, buddy?
One. Is that what it is?
All right. We'll a few more weeks.
Next time.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining this Sunday.
For sure.
All right. Bye.
Bye,
See you guys
guys.
later.
Yep. Bye.